Imagine walking into a courthouse, confident in your beliefs, only to be humiliated in front of a crowd for daring to have your own opinion. They thought they could crush you. Words, stares. Even the judge turned into a dictator on stage. But what they didn't know was this. Their worst nightmare just walked in, wearing a red cap. Here's how it all started. Elizabeth Harper, 45, walked confidently into the Oregon Supreme Court building. She looked poised in a tailored navy suit, her chestnut hair pulled back neatly, but it was the red MAGA hat on her head that turned every head in the room. In a state like Oregon, the hat was less a fashion statement and more a lightning rod, and Elizabeth wore it with unwavering pride. She wasn't here for attention, though. She was here to observe court proceedings as part of her new role, though no one yet knew she had been appointed Chief Justice by the governor. The courthouse lobby buzzed with its usual business until Elizabeth stepped inside. Conversations slowed, and whispers filled the air as eyes locked onto the unmistakable symbol of her hat. Among those watching was Judge Clara Blake, a 53-year-old veteran with a fiery reputation and a deep disdain for anything remotely Republican. When Clara spotted Elizabeth, her expression shifted from confusion to seething rage. "Unreal," Clara muttered, slamming her office door behind her before storming back out moments later. She made a beeline for Elizabeth, who was calmly speaking to the clerk at the information desk. "You've got to be kidding me," Clara said loudly, her voice cutting through the room like a knife. "Why is a Republican troublemaker freely roaming this courthouse?" Elizabeth turned to face her, unfazed by the outburst. "I'm sorry. Do we know each other?" Clara laughed bitterly, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "No, and trust me, I prefer to keep it that way. But let me guess. You're here to stir up trouble, just like the rest of your kind." "Excuse me," Elizabeth replied, her tone calm but firm. "On what grounds are you making these accusations?" "On the grounds that you're standing here, parading that ridiculous hat like it's a badge of honor." Clara shot back. "This is a place for justice, not whatever nonsense you stand for." The crowd of courthouse staff and visitors began to grow, their murmurs blending into an uneasy hum. Elizabeth straightened her posture and met Clara's glare with a measured look. "With all due respect, Judge, your comments are inappropriate," she said. "I'm here for professional reasons, and I expect to be treated accordingly." Clara's face twisted in mock amusement. "Professional reasons? That's rich. You're disrupting the order of this courthouse with your offensive display. Guards, take her into custody." The security guards hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "Ma'am," one of them said cautiously, "are you sure about this?" "Do it," Clara snapped, pointing dramatically at Elizabeth. "She's a public disturbance, and I'm going to handle this personally." The guards reluctantly escorted Elizabeth into a courtroom as the crowd followed, murmurs turning into whispers of disbelief. Inside, Clara took her seat behind the bench, reveling in the spectacle she'd created. Elizabeth sat quietly in the defendant's chair, her composure unshaken despite the absurdity of the situation. "Is this really how justice works in your court?" she asked. Clara smirked, leaning forward. "In my court, people like you don't get a free pass. Let's see how bold you are after I make an example of you." As Clara prepared to deliver her verdict, the doors to the courtroom swung open. Everyone turned to see who had entered, their curiosity piqued by the interruption. Elizabeth Harper sat squarely in the defendant's chair, her hands resting calmly on her lap. Around her, cameras clicked and buzzed as journalists eagerly captured every second of the spectacle. The courtroom was packed, not with a jury or legitimate caseworkers, but with curious onlookers who had caught wind of the absurdity unfolding. Judge Clara Blake, perched high on her bench, looked like she was about to put on the performance of her career. "We will not allow symbols of hatred to destroy our state," Clara's voice boomed, echoing through the room as she pointed dramatically at Elizabeth's red MAGA hat. "This individual has insulted the very principles of democracy with her presence." The crowd murmured, a mix of confusion and disbelief rippling through the room. Elizabeth, however, remained composed, her expression calm despite the chaos surrounding her. "Your Honor," she said, her voice steady but firm, "I have the right to legal representation and a fair defense." Clara smirked, shaking her head. "Legal representation? For you? That's cute. But let's not waste time pretending this is anything other than an open and shut case. You shouldn't even be here." The room grew quieter, tension thick in the air. Elizabeth felt the eyes of the audience on her, their curiosity palpable. She knew she was standing in the middle of a circus, not a courtroom. Clara, meanwhile, leaned forward, as if she were savoring every second of her self-proclaimed righteous mission. "I will be delivering my verdict right now," Clara announced, her voice filled with conviction. "This is not a debate. This is justice." Elizabeth glanced around the room, meeting the eyes of several reporters. Their cameras were locked on her, catching the calm determination in her posture and the slight furrow in her brow. The guards who had brought her in stood silently at the back of the room, their unease evident. Clara's words weren't landing the way she thought they were. Even the crowd was beginning to sense that the judge was overstepping. "Your Honor," Elizabeth interrupted, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Is this a courtroom or a stage? Because so far, it feels like one person is doing all the performing." A few reporters stifled chuckles, their cameras shifting to capture Clara's reaction. The judge's face flushed, but she quickly masked her embarrassment with a sharp glare. "This is my courtroom," Clara barked, "and you will not undermine my authority with your antics." "Antics?" Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. "I asked for legal representation. That's not an antic. That's my right." Clara ignored her, turning back to the audience as if she were addressing a crowd of supporters at a rally. "This courthouse does not tolerate disruption, and this woman is a disruption incarnate. Her actions, her presence, her had are an affront to everything this state stands for." The absurdity of it all wasn't lost on the audience. The cameras zoomed in on Clara's animated gestures, on the ridiculous fervor in her tone, and on Elizabeth's composed yet pointed expression. Whispers floated through the room, a growing consensus forming. This wasn't justice. It was a power trip. Just as Clara opened her mouth to deliver what she clearly thought would be the final word, the heavy courtroom doors swung open with a loud creak. The sound cut through the tension like a lightning strike. All heads turned toward the back of the room. Standing in the doorway was Governor James Hunter, his calm, commanding presence instantly silencing the room. At 60, he exuded the kind of authority that didn't need shouting to make itself known. His gray suit was immaculate, his expression unreadable. "What is going on here?" Governor Hunter's voice carried effortlessly across the room, every word dripping with quiet authority. Clara's face paled, the self-assured smirk vanishing in an instant. "Governor Hunter," she stammered, trying to compose herself. "This is, just a minor disturbance I'm handling." Hunter's sharp gaze moved from Clara to Elizabeth, then to the journalists, their cameras still recording every detail. "Minor disturbance," Hunter repeated, his tone even but pointed. "It looks more like you're holding an unsanctioned trial. Mind explaining?" Elizabeth stayed silent, her lips curling into a faint, knowing smile. She didn't need to say a word. Governor Hunter's presence alone was enough to shift the balance of power in the room. What exactly is going on here? Governor James Hunter's voice cut through the air like a sharp blade, silencing the chaotic courtroom in an instant. His steady tone carried a weight that demanded answers, and the room collectively held its breath. Judge Clara Blake turned slowly, her usually confident demeanor replaced with a pale, frozen expression. "Governor Hunter," she stammered, her lips twitching into a nervous smile. This is nothing, really. Just a minor issue I'm handling." Elizabeth Harper, calm but resolute, rose from her seat, her gaze meeting the governor's directly. "The issue, Governor," she said firmly, "is that Judge Blake seems to think it's acceptable to publicly humiliate someone based solely on their beliefs." Hunter's eyes moved to Elizabeth, scanning her from head to toe. Recognition flickered in his expression, and his lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "Ah, Miss Harper," he said smoothly, "it seems you've wasted no time acquainting yourself with the quirks of our judicial system." The collective gasp from the crowd was almost audible. Clara's face drained of color, her jaw dropping slightly as the full weight of Hunter's words began to sink in. The governor stepped further into the room, his measured steps echoing on the polished floors. "Allow me to introduce Miss Elizabeth Harper," he announced, his voice steady and authoritative. "She is the newly appointed Chief Justice of the Oregon Supreme Court, personally selected by me." The room erupted. Cameras flashed wildly as reporters scrambled to capture every second of this unfolding drama. Clara, rooted to the spot, seemed paralyzed, her wide eyes darting between Elizabeth and the governor. "I must say," Hunter continued, turning his gaze to Clara, "this is quite the introduction to our system for Miss Harper. It appears there are significant issues that require immediate attention." Clara finally found her voice, though it wavered as she spoke. "Governor, I wasn't aware." Hunter raised a hand, silencing her. "Clearly you weren't. But the optics of this situation are concerning, to say the least. I trust there will be a thorough investigation into your actions here today." The crowd murmured, the weight of the governor's words sparking a mixture of shock and satisfaction. Elizabeth, standing tall and composed, let the moment speak for itself. She didn't need to add anything. The truth had already revealed itself. Clara tried to sputter a defense, but the words stuck in her throat. Meanwhile, the journalists shifted their focus to Elizabeth, their cameras zooming in on her confident posture. Within minutes, the courtroom spectacle had gone viral, the story spreading like wildfire across the internet. Headlines condemned Clara's abuse of power, while hailing Elizabeth as a symbol of integrity and resilience. Later that week, it was announced that Judge Clara Blake had been temporarily suspended, pending a formal review of her behavior. Public outrage grew louder, with many calling for her permanent removal. Elizabeth, now fully stepping into her role as Chief Justice, wasted no time getting to work. Her first priority was ensuring that incidents like this would never happen again. She spearheaded reforms aimed at increasing transparency and accountability in the judicial system. Under her leadership, the Oregon Supreme Court earned a reputation as one of the most fair and trustworthy institutions in the country. As for Elizabeth, she became more than just a judge. She became a symbol of hope for justice. And while she no longer wore her MAGA hat to work, its message remained stitched into her unwavering commitment to fairness and truth. What would you have done in Elizabeth's place? Do you think she handled the situation well? Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you or someone you know ever faced a similar experience? Let's discuss. Don't forget to like this post if the story resonated with you, and share it to help spread the message. This story was created to shine a light on important issues and inspire positive change. Your opinion matters, and together we can make the world a better, fairer place.